At the time, my name was Charlotte Doyle, and though I have kept the name, I am not, for reasons you will soon discover, the same Charlotte Doyle. My first introduction to the true confessions of Charlotte Doyle was in grade 6 for a class read. It was my first reading experience beyond reading Geronimo Stilton and a series of unfortunate events with my sister. I thought about this book for a long time after finishing it. When one of my high school teachers let me keep a copy, I wondered for a while what I would do with it. Am I going to read it again? Or am I just going to keep it as a memento of my younger years? When I got the idea for this episode, I decided to skim the book for the parts I remember most from when I read it several years ago, rather than rereading it, so my current thoughts don't overshadow my 11-year-old self's perspective. To start off, let's talk about the quote from the beginning. Maybe it's just a part of growing up, or maybe it has something to do with womanhood, but I feel so disconnected from the person I once was. I had different thoughts and ideas. I acted different, I had a different style, and really, a whole different personality. If you met us side by side, you would never guess we are the same person. And I suppose that's because we aren't. I am not, for obvious reasons, the same girl I was at 11 years old. One of the most significant details to me was on page 25, when Aria gives Charlotte the knife. I remember the unsettling feeling the scene gave me, and really how unsettling every scene with Aria was. Throughout the whole book, I was left wondering if he was a good guy or a bad guy, if he was alive or dead. The first scene he appears in, he gives Charlotte a dirk, as it's called in the book. And though it could have been just in case, it felt more like Aria knew there was something Charlotte would need protection from. There was really a sense of distrust with all of the crew members. Captain Jaggery seemed nice at the start, but it is eventually revealed that he isn't. Then there are the other crew members, who seem to like Charlotte and even encourage her when she has to prove she can be a member of the crew, but they refuse to speak out for her when she is suspected of murder, even when they know the truth. Reading this book as a kid left me so confused that I honestly didn't remember who was good or bad or who was dead or alive by the end of the book. Then there's the round robins and the mutiny, and eventually Captain Jaggery's death, and the whippings and the murders in between. The round robin was introduced fairly early on page 48, and even the mutiny was a lot sooner than I remembered. Initially, the mutiny happens on page 92. This is where Cranach dies and Aria is whipped, leading us to believe that he died when he didn't. And that was pretty much the end of the mutiny until Mr. Hollybrass's murder and then Captain Jaggery's death. After Captain Jaggery's death, Charlotte takes over as captain, and I, for some reason, believed this part to be much of the book, although it only lasted 4 pages. I guess this was probably the most significant part to me, as was the moment Charlotte changed into sailor's clothes and joined the crew, because these were moments when Charlotte did something unexpected and defied gender norms. Initially, I would have assumed the first quote meant she used to be a little hellraiser pirate, but became a civilized lady after leaving the Seahawk. But I realized at the end of the book that it meant she is no longer the innocent people-pleaser she was at 13 years old, and is now an independent woman. I don't know how I wanted this book to end. I think, as a kid, I was probably glad when she returned to the ship, because that was exciting and adventurous. But I've learned as I got older that mundane and traditional are also acceptable. I think now I would have been satisfied enough if Charlotte returned home to her parents and carried on with her average life, having learned many lessons and grown into a more mature person. But as a kid, I think it was important as well to see Charlotte defying all of her expectations and living her life as she saw fit, rather than following the path laid out for her by her parents. I must admit, there isn't really a conclusion to this episode, but I guess the intention of this was to give some perspective of who I was as a kid. I've just thought about this book for a long time, and I wanted to do something about it. Thank you for watching.